Imagine you wake up tomorrow and 90% of everything you own has vanished. Not slowly, not over years, but in a matter of days. Your bank refuses to give you your own money. Your job no longer exists, and the system you trusted your entire life suddenly feels like it was built on nothing. This is not imagination. This is what millions of people experienced when the Great Depression began, and the terrifying part is almost no one saw it coming. In the years before the collapse, the world looked unstoppable. America was booming. Factories were producing at record levels. People were buying cars, radios, and living a life that felt modern, powerful, and full of promise. The stock market became a symbol of this new era, a place where ordinary people believed they could become wealthy without limits. Stories of easy money spread everywhere. Neighbors talked about stocks like they were guaranteed success. And slowly a dangerous belief took hold that prices would only move in one direction, upward. But behind this excitement, something fragile was growing. People were not just investing, they were borrowing money to invest. Banks were giving loans easily, and brokers allowed investors to buy stocks with very little of their own money. This created a system where millions were exposed to risk. They did not fully understand it looked like wealth, but in reality, it was leverage stacked on top of hope. And as long as prices kept rising, the illusion stayed alive. Then something changed quietly at first, then violently. Fear entered the market, and once fear appears, it spreads faster than confidence ever did. Investors began selling stocks. Prices started falling, and suddenly the same people who believed they were getting rich realized they could lose everything. Black Thursday arrived, and panic began to take control. Crowds gathered outside the stock exchange, desperate to understand what was happening. Black Tuesday followed, and the collapse turned historic. Billions of dollars were wiped out in hours. Fortunes disappeared instantly, and the belief in endless growth shattered. But the real nightmare had not even started yet, because the crash was only the trigger. What followed was a chain reaction that reached into every home, every street, and every family. Banks that had invested heavily in the market now faced massive losses. People rushed to withdraw their savings, creating chaos outside banks' lines stretched for hours. Fear replaced trust, and one by one banks collapsed, taking with them the life savings of millions. Imagine working your entire life saving carefully, and then in a single moment, everything is gone. Not because you made a mistake, but because the system failed. Without banks, the economy began to suffocate. Businesses could not get loans. Factories slowed. Production companies started shutting down. Unemployment rose at a speed no one had ever seen before. Millions lost their jobs, and suddenly survival became uncertain. Families struggled to afford food. Parents could not provide for their children, and people who once lived comfortable lives found themselves standing in long bread lines, waiting for basic meals. The streets that once represented opportunity now reflected desperation. And this crisis did not stay in one country. It spread across the world. Because economies were connected, trade collapsed as people stopped buying goods. Industries in Europe and other regions began to decline. Governments tried to protect themselves by increasing tariffs, but this made things worse. Global trade shrank even further, and the world economy entered a downward spiral that seemed impossible to stop. Then came one of the most dangerous forces. Deflation. Prices started falling, which sounds positive, but it created a trap. When prices fall, businesses earn less money, so they cut wages or lay off workers. People then have even less money to spend, which forces prices down even more, and this cycle continues, pulling the economy deeper into collapse. It was not just a financial crisis, it was a psychological one. Fear controlled decisions. People stopped spending even when they could, because uncertainty made them freeze. Trust disappeared, and without trust, no economy can function in the middle of this darkness. A shift began. Leaders and thinkers realized that the old belief of doing nothing was not enough. The system needed intervention. In the United States, President Franklin Roosevelt introduced a new approach. Massive projects were launched. Roads, bridges, dams were built not just to develop the country but to give people jobs, hope and income. Banks were reformed. Rules were introduced to rebuild trust, and slowly the idea emerged that governments must act when markets fail. But recovery did not happen overnight. The pain lasted for years. Entire generations were shaped by this experience. People became more cautious, more aware of risk, more focused on security. The Great Depression changed how the world thinks about money forever. It showed how quickly greed can turn into fear, how systems built on confidence can collapse when that confidence disappears, and how deeply connected economies really are. One shock can travel across continents and affect millions. And here is the part that should make you pause. The patterns that caused the Great Depression still exist. Today, markets still rise on optimism and fall on fear. People still chase opportunities without fully understanding risk. And systems are still vulnerable to shocks that can spread faster than anyone expects. The difference is not in the system. The difference is in whether you understand it, because history does not repeat exactly, but it rhymes. And the Great Depression is not just a story of the past. It is a warning. It is a reminder that stability is fragile, that confidence can vanish overnight, and that the biggest risks are often the ones people ignore when everything seems perfect. So the real question is not what happened in 1929. The real question is, if the same signs appeared again, would you recognize them, or would you be standing in that same line outside a bank, wondering how everything disappeared so fast?